Feeling overwhelmed by the challenges of being a single parent? You are not alone. Welcome to Single Parent Reset, the podcast that helps you navigate the ups and downs of single parenthood and find the balance that you deserve. Whether you're a single parent, co-parent or solo parent, this is the show for you. I'm Orla and I'm a life coach for single parents and a single parent myself. I know how hard it can be, but I believe every single parent has the strength to create a life that they are proud of. For more information about me and the work that I do, please visit my website solascoaching.com. That is SOLAS coaching.com. In each episode of this podcast, we'll be shining a light on the unique struggles single parents face and cover the aspects of being a single parent that are often overlooked and left unspoken. I'll be sharing actionable steps to help you overcome these challenges and find more calm and fulfillment in your life. Single Parent Reset is your weekly opportunity to gain a fresh perspective, take back control, and feel more in charge of your journey. Do you ever feel worn down by your own thoughts, or like you're carrying this invisible weight of not enoughness? You may be dealing with a very loud inner critic. And if this is the case, then today's episode is most certainly for you. We're going to explore what your inner critic is, where does it even come from, and also how to no longer have this inner critic rule your inner monologue. Your inner critic is that harsh, sometimes relentless voice that makes you doubt yourself, feel guilty, or think you're failing as a parent, a friend, or just a person in general. And for single parents, that voice can feel extra loud because you're often carrying so much more responsibility alone, and there's no partner to share the load or to remind you at the end of the day that you are in fact doing a good job. This inner critic can show up in so many different types of ways. It could be telling you that you're not organised enough with your morning routines, or that you're not a good enough parent when your kids have a tantrum, or it could be telling you that you're just not good enough at your job because you were late yet again. Sometimes it might even make you feel isolated, like everyone else has it more together than you do. But very often, your inner critic is just not the truth. It's usually a mix of old messages we picked up growing up, unrealistic expectations from society, and pressure that we put on ourselves to be perfect in the most impossible of circumstances. In this episode, we are going to unpack your inner critic and walk through 3 key shifts: from becoming aware of when your inner critic is present, pausing to question where has that even come from, and meeting it with curiosity and compassion rather than fear or shame. And finally, knowing when maybe your inner critic is pointing to something that does need attention so that you can take meaningful, practical action without tearing yourself down. This isn't about silencing the voice completely or pretending it's not there. This is going to be about changing your relationship with your inner critic so that it stops running the show altogether and starts becoming something you can work with, not against. This episode is here to remind you don't have to believe everything you think. And you do deserve to speak to yourself with the same care and patience you offer to the people you love the most. There was a time, especially on the weekends when I didn't have my son, where I just completely stopped eating properly. Dinner for me ended up just being toast, crackers and cheese, or cereal, something quick and just mindless. I really just couldn't be bothered to cook for myself. But when I slowed down and started paying attention, I noticed this really harsh voice was showing up for me, especially when I was doing the weekly food shop. As I walked up and down the aisles, I would hear myself saying things like, "It's just you, what's the point of buying proper food?" Or, "Don't be so ridiculous, are you really going to cook a whole meal and sit at the table alone and eat it by yourself? Now that's just pathetic." And I went along with that inner narrative for months, and I accepted this as fact. Until one day, I came across a recipe I really wanted to try because I actually do enjoy cooking and making nice foods. And this sparked something in me that I'd forgotten about. However, as quick as I got excited about the recipe, just as quick my inner critic jumped in and started to say things like, "You're not going to make that just for you, are you? That's a bit sad." And for the first time in the last few months, I actually paused and I really heard what my inner critic was saying. I asked myself, where is this coming from? Why do I believe I don't deserve to eat proper dinner anymore? And I realised that for me, dinner has always been a social thing. Growing up, eating together meant connection, family, being with other people. It's socialising. And now that I was living alone pretty much half the time, that belief just didn't fit anymore. But I hadn't let it go. I'd internalized this idea that if I wasn't cooking for someone else, it wasn't worth it. That I wasn't worth it. And I also had another critic that was showing up for me as well. And this was cooking for one was just a waste of time. And I don't even know what to make. But that was a belief I could change with action. I could experiment, try new recipes, make mistakes, learn, figure out how do you cook for one. And slowly, I started cooking again. Not just to feed myself, but as an act of care. A signal that I mattered even when I was on my own. That inner critic, I'm not going to lie, it still pops up now and then. When I'm walking through the supermarket, I can hear myself saying things like, what's the point of planning meals? It's just you. But now I recognise that voice. I pause, I get curious, and I respond with kindness. And then I put those ingredients in my basket because I know I'm allowed to nourish myself even when it is just me in the house. And today I'm going to talk you through how you can also start taking back control of your inner critic that may have been quietly calling all the shots for you without you even realising it. The first step in getting to know your inner critic is simply becoming aware of when it's showing up. Now, this might sound really obvious, but the reality is a lot of us are so used to that harsh internal voice that we don't even notice anymore. It's just this background noise we've come to accept. So let's slow things down and get curious. I want you to think about a recent time when things felt especially stressful or overwhelming. Maybe it was one of those mornings where everything that could go wrong did go wrong. The kids wouldn't get dressed, you couldn't find any uniforms, you were already running late, and the whole morning just felt like chaos. Or maybe you had a presentation at work that did not go to plan because you just didn't have enough time to prepare the evening before, as you ended up getting caught up doing things with your kids. It could even be a date that you've been really hopeful about that ended up leaving you feeling just deflated and alone. Or maybe it's something subtle but heavy, like spending the afternoon with your friends who were all in nuclear families and walking away feeling this deep ache, this envy that you didn't even want to admit that is there, but is. Whatever the situation was for you, that was less than ideal. I now want you to think back and focus on what you were saying to yourself before, during, and after that moment. Let's start to become clear on what your inner critic is saying to you. So if for you it was an unnecessarily chaotic morning that sent you into a spin recently, at the beginning of the morning, you could have already been berating yourself for not getting up half an hour earlier to allow yourself time to prepare for the day, and started telling yourself you're so unorganised and lazy. And during the chaos of maybe leaving your house, you could have been telling yourself that everyone's going to be judging me because I'm a single parent and I'm always rushing out the door in a flurry of mania. And afterwards, you could have continued this negative spiral of self-talk, berating yourself for everything you did wrong that morning and how you are just not a good enough parent for your kids. Or if we use the example of that presentation in work that just did not go to plan. Before the event, you may have been walking into work telling yourself you're not up to the challenge of this presentation and everyone will already be expecting you to fail. During the presentation, you may have been telling yourself you're not good enough and everyone knows that I don't belong here. And then after the event has passed, you may really have let your inner critic run wild, spiraling into thoughts that you'd let your team down, that no doubt you're going to get fired any second, and then how on earth are you going to pay the bills? Once we hone in on our inner critic, it can be pretty eye-opening to see just how far we let it speak negatively to us, catastrophizing and completely spiraling out of control. And without realising, this can be happening throughout our day, further feeding negative thoughts and emotions. And I want you to be kind to yourself here. If you now realise that there is an ongoing monologue of negative chatter from your inner critic, know that you are not the only one who experiences this. And this can be completely normal, especially for single parents who carry so much. But once we start to bring it into our awareness, we can start to meet it with some compassion and slowly begin to shift the negative self-talk from our inner critic into something more productive. Now let's talk about how to respond to that inner critic. Instead of seeing it as the enemy to fight or silence or just ignore, what if we got to know it a little better? What if we approach it the same way we might approach a child having a meltdown, not with shame or fear, but with curiosity and care? Let's go back to the example of the stressful morning when the inner critic told you you're lazy and disorganized, you should have got up earlier. Rather than pushing that voice away, acknowledge it. Say to yourself, okay, I hear you. You're saying that I'm lazy and disorganized. Then gently ask, where did I learn this? Whose voice does this sound like? What does this part of me actually need right now? Often, that inner critic is echoing something old, maybe a parent who had high expectations, or it could be a teacher who labelled you, or even society's message about how a good parent should look. This voice can feel really personal, but it might not even be yours. And if, as you reflect, you realise, wait, I don't even believe this about myself, that's when you can lovingly say, I get that you're trying to protect me from being judged or failing, but this belief, it's not actually true for me anymore. You're not dismissing the inner critic, you're putting it in its place with kindness. You're giving yourself space to reframe. So you might shift from saying I'm lazy to this morning was messy, but that doesn't define who I am. I had a lot on my plate and I did my best. And maybe your best today wasn't picture perfect, but that is okay. Your inner critic isn't going to disappear overnight, but the more you meet it with compassion and curiosity, the less control it will have over you. Now, what about if your inner critic brings something up that does feel kind of true to you? What if you truly do believe what your inner critic is saying? So, for example, if your inner critic is saying to you that you are not good enough to do this job, and when you look at all the evidence it presents to you, it is in fact pretty solid evidence. You might find yourself thinking, but it's not wrong. I really didn't do well in that presentation. I haven't kept on top of things lately. And the reality is, sometimes the inner critic isn't just being dramatic. It might just be highlighting an area of your life that genuinely does need your attention. But that doesn't mean we can speak in a negative way and an unhelpful way to ourselves. So looking at that work example, your inner critic might be saying, you're not good enough for this job, you're failing, everyone sees it. And maybe if you look at the facts, okay, yeah, you have dropped the ball a couple of times. The workload is overwhelming. You're exhausted. Maybe you're barely keeping your head above water. Now, in the past, this is where your critic would spiral, saying things like you're useless, you'll never get it together, you're going to lose absolutely everything. But now, with the awareness and compassion on your side, you can interrupt that passion and say, okay, something here isn't working. That doesn't make me a failure. It just means I need support or change or to try something different. That's where the real action lives. So this might look like having a conversation with your manager about your workloads. Ask for help, even though I know it can feel hard. Or even reevaluating if this job is still the right fit for you. Or maybe it's even just deciding to stop berating yourself up for being human. Tell yourself, I'm allowed to be struggling and I'm allowed to take the steps forward from here. Your inner critic, at its best, is trying to protect you from pain, from rejection, from judgments. But we don't need to let it be in the driver's seat all the time. We can hear it, learn from it, and let a wiser, kinder voice lead the way. So we've covered a lot with the inner critic, so let's look back quickly. We've talked about what the inner critic actually is, the voice that shows up in stressful moments and piles on guilt, shame or doubt, often when we're already stretched thin. We've talked through the steps you can take to manage your inner critic, from becoming aware and noticing when it shows up and what it's actually saying, to instead of blindly believing it, pausing and questioning where it's coming from and viewing it with curiosity and compassion, to knowing when your inner critic needs to be listened to and taking action through practical supportive steps further without tearing yourself down along the way. Learning to manage your inner critic is especially important as a single parent, because when you're doing it all, you don't need another weight dragging you down from the insides. The next time your inner critic starts to kick off and take up its megaphone, I want you to pause. Ask yourself, is it actually true? Where did this belief come from? What would I say to a friend in the same situation? And then choose your next step from there. You won't always get it right, but you'll build awareness over time, and that changes everything. I want you to have a think this week. Where does your loudest inner critic come from? And share with me on Instagram how meeting that inner critic with compassion and curiosity has shifted things for you. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Single Parent Reset. You have taken 15 minutes out of your day to do something for you, and that alone is a step in the right direction towards living a life you deserve. In next week's episode, we're going to be talking all about getting okay to say I'm not okay, and learning how to actually take off that mask and let others in. If you're interested in working with me one-to-one, please go to my website at solaccoaching.com for further details. And don't forget to follow my Instagram page at solaccoaching for more insightful content on living a life to be proud of as a single parent. As always, if you find this episode useful, please share with your friends and family. Remember, many single parents may seem like they have it all together, but this could be exactly what they need to help them move forward today.